This technical session explores the application of the ANSYS Fluent GPU solver in solving airflow around an aircraft. It highlights the current CFD engineering obstacles to demonstrate how the ANSYS Fluent GPU solver can effectively address these challenges. We will look into the process of setting up an external aerodynamic simulation from the meshing to solving on the GPU, followed by some basic post-processing. In today's CFD environment, we have three goals that we want to achieve. First of all, we need the simulations to be as accurate as possible. Secondly, we need the simulations to be as fast as possible to meet our product launch deadlines. And thirdly, we need to have the ability to simulate large, complex models in a reasonable amount of time. Looking at the engineering challenges that we have, firstly, we have physics models that might lack some real-world accuracy. In that sense, the GPU might not be any different to the CPU. Secondly, what we found a lot is that we have very long simulation runtimes that can range from days to weeks, and we would like to improve that. And then thirdly, we might not have enough computational power to run these large complex models that we have. ANSYS Fluent GPU solver can solve much faster than a comparable CPU. So where you typically solve your simulations in days, you can reduce the simulation time now to hours. Okay. This can be done because the CPU is not offloading calculations to the GPU, but the GPU is actually doing all the calculations. So there's no offloading, it's natively run on the GPU, and therefore the simulation speed is significantly faster. Secondly, we can increase the scale of our models. So we can either do larger models with more cells, or we can do more complex models. And this is all possible because we can get the simulation results now in a reasonable amount of time. But all of this doesn't help us at all if our simulations are not as accurate as possible. Okay. Now the GPU solver has been validated against experimental results as well as the CPU solver. And looking at results, we can get a good confidence in the results of the GPU solver. Okay, here are just a few examples. So first of all, looking at accuracy, you can see three examples. On the left hand side, we have our landing gear, where we compare the experimental results, the GPU results, and the CPU results of the pressure coefficient around a wheel. And you can see there that all three graphs pretty much line up with very little variation. In the middle, we have the pressure coefficient around an airfoil. You can see there as well that the experimental results and the numerical results vary very little, and the CPU and the GPU basically lies on top of one another. And then on the right hand side, we have a propeller simulation, and where there we compare the GPU results to the experimental results, and you can see that there's hardly any difference between the two. So this gives us a good confidence that the results of the GPU solver is as accurate as we can get it. Let's look at the increase in speed we can get from some industrial cases. On the left hand side, we look at airflow through a filter which has a porous zone, and there we compare the Intel Xeon Gold processor with 32 cores with an NVIDIA A100 GPU card. And in this case, the GPU card is about 8 times faster than the Xeon Gold. In the middle, we have flow through a heat exchanger, and there we can compare the Intel Xeon Gold with 8 cores with one NVIDIA A100 GPU card. And there, the GPU is about 15 times faster than the Gold processor with 8 cores. And then on the right hand side, we have flow over a vehicle, and there we compare the Intel Xeon Platinum processor with 80 cores to 8 GPU A100 cards. And there the 8 cards is about 33 times faster than the Xeon Platinum processor. Lastly, let's look at the increase in speed we can get from a range of different measures. Okay. So on the left hand side, we have a compressor with 500 million cells, and we can solve that in less than 8 hours. In the middle, again, we have our landing gear with 14 million cells, and that speeds up the simulation about 10 times faster on the GPU than on the CPU. And then on the right hand side we have a aeroacoustic simulation with 24 million cells, and they can also solve in less than 12 hours. So basically we can get results overnight. Now let's dive into the model that we're going to look at today. So we're going to look at the external aerodynamic flow over an aircraft. So we're going to start off looking at geometry. I'm not going to do the geometry cleanup. I'm going to start with a clean geometry already, but I'm going to extract the fluid volume around the aircraft, which we're going to use to solve the flow through. Next up, we will create meshing, and the meshing will be used, the meshing application will be ANSYS Fluent Mesher, and we're going to use the watertight meshing scheme for this application. And then after that, we will transfer the mesh to the ANSYS Fluent GPU solver, where we will set up the boundary condition, the material properties, and solve the model. Lastly, we're going to look at some post-processing, where we're going to look at the lift and drag coefficients, as well as some pressure plots on the aircraft surfaces, as well as some velocity contours and vectors, as well as path lines of velocity. Here we can see the geometry of the aircraft that we're going to use for the simulation. You will notice that we only have half the aircraft, since we are assuming that the flow over the aircraft will be symmetrical, and therefore we only need to simulate half of it. You will also notice that I have a zone inside the engine, which we can use to account and model the flow through the engine. Now the first part that we need to do is we need to create the fluid domain around the aircraft, because that is what we're interested in. For that we're going to use the enclosure tool and select the aircraft, and we'll create an enclosure around the aircraft. I'm going to use the default values, but for real life applications you will need larger areas upstream and downstream of the aircraft. So this will now create this box and then do a Boolean operation with the geometry of the aircraft, so that we get a void where we had an aircraft, as you can see there. The next step is that we need to cut the domain on the symmetry plane, because we don't want anything on the other side of the symmetry. So for that we're going to use the split body tool, select the domain, select the symmetry plane, and then delete the additional fluid volume that we don't require. Now we also need to account for that zone we have inside the engine. So we're going to do a Boolean operation to remove that also from the fluid enclosure, so we have that as a separate zone. For that we're going to use the combine tool, use the enclosure, and use the solid zone, which is that circular zone there, as the Boolean operation tool. Now we see we have two fluid zones. We're going to now suppress the solid parts for physics, because we're not interested in that anymore. We're going to only look at the fluid zones. Now since we have two zones, we also need to shade our topology so that we will get flow going from the one zone to the other zone. So let's do the set topology tool, and then that will look at any surfaces and edges that can be shared between the parts. You can see that the zones are now highlighted in red, and press a check button to create the shared topology. Next up we need to create some names that we can use to set our boundary conditions. So first of all, let's name our symmetry plane. Just going to call it symmetry, and then we're going to group all the other external surfaces together and call that the far field, which we're going to use as the pressure far field in our simulation. And then lastly, we also need to just name the parts of the engine component. So we're going to call this interior in, and then interior out. Okay, and that's the geometry that we need to use. Now we can save it. And then from our application here we can go to the watertight geometry workflow, which will then open Fluent in meshing mode. Here I can use as many cores as I have licenses and as many cores as the machine has. So this is a gold processor and it has 40 cores, so I'm going to use that. That will now open the Fluent in meshing mode and import my airplane simulation geometry that we've just created. You'll see we'll now start to extract some of the surfaces to name them and make them available for the settings afterwards. So there we can see our geometry. Next we can add some local sizes if you want to, but I don't want to add any specific local sizing, so I'm just happy with not adding anything. Next up is we need to create our surface mesh. So at this stage the settings are quite coarse, so I'm going to refine the settings to something that is more realistic, and also add a minimum of 3 cells in a gap. Okay, after setting all of these things I can generate the mesh, and this will take a few minutes to generate. Now that we have the surface geometry, now we can go forward. Okay. So next we need to say that we're only looking into voids, and we want the internal surfaces to be internal, not walls between the fluid regions. So let's describe the geometry, and then after that we need to set up what type of boundaries we're going to have. So the symmetry will be symmetry, the interiors will be internals, and then around it we'll have a pressure far field boundary. So all of those defaults are fine. And then estimate the number of fluid regions. We will have 2, one for the bulk of the air and then one for the air inside the engine. Okay, then just looking at the fluid regions, so these are correct. Yes, I'm going to update regions and then add some boundary layers. Again, I'm going to use the default values just to add some boundary layers for more accurate calculations close to the walls. Generally, you would probably for aerofoils have more layers than what we have, but for the demo purposes this will be fine. And then after that we can now create a whole volume mesh. Now we can see I'm going to create a polyhedral mesh, which gives good quality elements and is quite easily to create even in complex geometries. Now, due to some questionable interdimensional geometry, my quality of our mesh is now maybe not as good as I would want it. So I'm going to just right click in that, improve volume mesh procedure to the model and run that. Then hopefully that will improve the quality of the results, quality of the mesh, which should give us better quality result in the end. Okay, now our geometry is improved to 0.15, so I'm happy with that. We can now actually have a look at the mesh and see relatively fine. You can see there around the aerofoil. You can see our inflation layer that we have there. You can also clip it in the other direction. You can see what the geometry around the wing looks like. Okay, if I'm happy with that, then I'm going to save my mesh. And now typically you can switch to simulation, and we will just open it directly on the solver, and it will use the same number of cores that you used to create the mesh. But because I want to open it in the GPU solver, I will need to exit my measure and then open the mesh again in the Fluent GPU solver. This is required because this solver, Fluent GPU solver, is a completely separate entity to the CPU solver. Okay, so now to use the GPU solver, I need to make use of an enterprise license, and then I go to my solution band selection there, and then select my native GPU. It's going to use 3 processors, so I have basically 1 processor for each GPU, and I'm just going to select 3 Tesla V100 cards for my simulation. Okay, and just go select my working directory, so I've saved it in the saved folder, and then start my Fluent interface. Okay, this will now open the Fluent solver interface. You'll notice that it looks very similar to the Fluent meshing interface. Obviously, we just have other tools. Okay, next step is I'm going to read in my mesh that I just saved. Okay, the mesh has been imported. You can have a look at the size, and then we'll see that we have about 6.5 million elements in the domain. Okay, now we need to set up our material properties, the models, and the boundary conditions. So first of all, because I want to make use of the ideal gas law, I need to switch on my energy equation. I'm happy with the default viscosity model. I'm not interested in any of the other models. Next up, I need to change my default fluid of air to be an ideal gas law instead of just a constant velocity, constant density. And then I need to go set up my boundary conditions. Now there's basically only 2 things that I need to do. So my pressure far field, I need to go and specify my Mach number. Okay, we just need to look at the direction of the flow. So if I quickly plot my mesh, I can have a look at the direction or the rotation that the plane is sitting at. Okay, you can see, so it's traveling in the positive z direction. So my flow is going in the negative z direction. So on the components, z must be -1. Okay, I'm happy with this initial Mach number of 0.6. Okay, then I would also like to monitor some parameters while the simulation is solving. So under my report definitions, I can add a service report or a force report or a volume report, whatever is important. So because it's an aeroplane, I'm going to monitor my lift and drag. Okay. So drag will be in the z direction. Just call it drag. Okay, the drag force on all the surfaces that I have. And then I'll do exactly the same for lift. Force report for lift. Positive y direction is correct. Let's call it lift force on all the parts. Print to console. Next step is I need to initialize my model. So I'll do hybrid initialization, which basically does 10 basic iterations just to get the flow profile around the aerofoil going before it starts to do the more complex detailed CFD calculations. After initialization is done, I can now go to my calculation. So let's just add 450 iterations to my model and click calculate. This will now open my residual monitor so I can see what the difference is from one iteration to the next. Hopefully these should go down, which is an indication that the simulation is converging. And you will also notice now that we have a drag plot and a lift plot, and those update while the simulation is solving. As you can see, it's going quite quickly through the iterations because of the 3 GPU cores that I'm having on the model. You see it is, simulating 6 million elements on the CPU typically takes much longer than what this is doing at the moment. So in the interest of time, I'll just stop the recording and then start it again after the results are done. Now that the simulation is done, we can look at some of the results. So first of all, look at some of the drag plots. You can see that the drag force is quite stable. Looking at the lift force, you can see that the lift is still fluctuating a little bit. This is mainly due to still the coarse measure around the wings, as well as some bad geometry that cause some fluctuations in the flow around the aircraft. We can also look at some contour plots. So let's look at the contour plot of pressure on the surfaces of the aeroplane. So there we can see the aeroplane colored by static pressure on the surfaces that is in the wind. You can see we have the high pressure. Okay, we can also look at contour plot of velocity on the symmetry plane, for example. See what that is doing. Maybe change it to just looking at local velocities. And we can also add the plane itself to my domain. Just color it by surface. Let's color it by type product. Okay, there we can get an idea of what the velocities are around the airplane. We can also create additional planes parallel to that one, going through the wing, for example. And then we can also then plot velocities on that plane. Okay, there's the velocity on that specific cross section. You can also go and display velocity vectors, for example, again on the symmetry plane. You just scale them a bit and make them a bit less. That basically will give us an indication of the direction that the air is traveling around the airfoil. Maybe we can see where there's around the aeroplane. We can see where there's maybe separation from these surfaces, which will give us a lot of losses in the system. For example, you can see on this tail piece, the air is traveling in an odd direction, which means that there's some losses on the aeroplane. Okay, then you can also create some path lines, which you can track. And basic path line shows the path that massless particles will travel through the domain. Now I want to create these path lines just releasing it just in front of the airplane and maybe on the wing. So I'm going to create some post-processing surfaces. So let's first create a quadratic surface. And we're going to put the coordinates in for that. 0 and x because that's on the symmetry plane, 2 meters above the center, and 9 meters which is in front of the airplane. And let's make that radius about 2 meters. Okay, let's create that surface, and then we're going to also create a line on the wing. So for that, I'm going to use -11 minus 15, minus 11, 6. So basically that means it's going to be a vertical line. Again, minus 15. Okay, let's just display those services to make sure that they are in the correct positions. So that will be that one and that. Yeah, my plane is not correct. Okay, oh, sorry, spherical, not plane. Okay, so there's a surface in front of the airplane. I'm going to use for tracking particles, and there's the line in front of the wing. So now I can go and display path lines. First of all, let's do it from the line. And it's colored by velocity and magnitude. So you can see the velocities as it flows across the wing. Okay, there's our wing. It's a bit thick, so we can change the dimensions. So make it 0.3 maybe. And it will also be nice to actually see the aeroplane with the lines. This takes some time to compute it due to the size of the mesh. Okay, so then you can see the flow around the airplane, around the wing. Now we can also, for example, plot it at the nose of the airplane. Okay, now we can see the flow of air around this fuselage basically. This is in front, then you see how it flows around the plane. Okay, so then I think this is a lot of basic examples of what you can get from the results. To get back to the presentation, let's look at some of the results where we compare the CPU with the GPU speed. Okay, so I've done several tests. You can see we've compared the Intel Xeon Gold with 240 cores. That is basically 12 processors. We use in parallel with NVIDIA Tesla V100, 2 cards, but in single precision mode, and then also 2 cards in double precision. Now the NVIDIA cards each has 80 streaming multiprocessors for a total of 160 cents. And then lastly we have the Tesla V100 with 3 cards, which basically is a total of 240 SMs in double precision. Now the 2 cards, you'll notice that the speed between the 240 cores on the CPU and the 2 cards with 160 SMs is very similar, so they're comparable in speed, but obviously it uses less licenses to solve in the same time. If we compare the CPU with 3 cards, we'll see that we use about the same license count because it's 240 SMs with 240 cores, but we have a speed increase, so basically a decrease in the duration of the simulation of about 40%. So that's a significant speed up compared to, first of all, your license cost, but also on the hardware cost that we're having. So you can see that it is worthwhile investing in GPUs to make your simulations faster and perform more complex simulations in the same amount of time as you would have been able to with CPUs. If you have any more queries, please contact us and we can discuss this in more detail. Thank you very much.